The loud thud from upstairs shattered the silence of Michael Brennan's conference call at 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. He froze mid-sentence, his heart immediately racing as his 8-month-old son's piercing scream followed. A scream of terror, not the usual fussy crying Michael had learned to distinguish. Before we begin this intense story of hidden danger, unexpected heroism, and the terrifying moment when a father's worst nightmare becomes reality, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. Your support helps us share more powerful stories. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global audience. Now let's dive into this gripping tale. "I have to go," Michael said abruptly to the faces on his screen, not waiting for responses before ending the video call. He was already running toward the stairs, taking them two at a time, his mind racing through terrible possibilities. Baby Ethan's room was on the second floor of Michael's Westchester estate. The nursery was supposed to be the safest room in the house, baby-proof to perfection, monitored by cameras, always attended by their nanny, Grace Chen. Grace had been with them for 3 months, since Michael's wife Amanda had returned to her surgical residency after maternity leave. Grace was perfect, experienced, credentialed, warm with Ethan, professional in every way. The agency had called her their best nanny, and Michael had seen no reason to doubt that assessment. Until now. Michael burst through the nursery door and his blood turned to ice. Grace was lying on the floor beside Ethan's crib, completely unresponsive. Her eyes were partially open but unfocused, her skin had a gray pallor and she wasn't moving. Not at all. And Ethan, sweet baby Ethan, was standing in his crib holding onto the rails, screaming at the top of his lungs, his face red and tear-streaked. The baby was staring down at Grace with obvious terror, as if he understood that something was very, very wrong. "Grace!" Michael shouted, rushing to her side while simultaneously pulling his phone from his pocket. "Grace, can you hear me?" No response. He checked for a pulse at her neck. It was there but weak and irregular. She was breathing but barely, each breath shallow and labored. Michael's fingers shook as he dialed 911. "I need an ambulance immediately. My son's nanny has collapsed. She's unconscious, breathing but barely, pulse is weak. She's unresponsive." "Is the child injured?" the dispatcher asked. Michael glanced at Ethan, who was still screaming. "No, the baby appears unharmed, just terrified. Please hurry. Something is seriously wrong. Ambulance is on the way. Stay on the line. Can you tell me anything about what happened?" "I don't know. I was working downstairs. I heard a loud thud and my son crying. I came up and found her like this." The dispatcher continued asking questions while Michael tried to assess Grace. He couldn't see any obvious injuries. No blood, no signs of trauma. She'd simply collapsed. But what? Ethan's screaming intensified and Michael made a quick decision. "I'm going to put you on speaker so I can get my son," he told the dispatcher. He lifted Ethan from the crib, and the baby immediately clutched at him, still crying but less frantically now that he was being held. Michael bounced him gently while checking Grace again. "Is there anyone else in the house?" the dispatcher asked. "No, just me and my son. My wife is at the hospital. She's a surgical resident. It's her shift." "Okay, the ambulance is 4 minutes away. Can you see anything that might have caused her collapse? Medications, chemicals, anything unusual?" Michael looked around the nursery with new eyes. Everything looked normal, the changing table, the rocking chair, the toys, the diaper pail. Nothing seemed out of place except for Grace's purse, which had fallen near her and spilled some of its contents. "Her purse fell," Michael said. Wait. He stepped closer, still holding Ethan. Among the spilled items he saw a pill bottle. He picked it up carefully, reading the label. "She has prescription medication. Looks like it's for diabetes. Insulin. Does she have diabetes that you know of?" "No, she never mentioned it. She filled out medical forms when we hired her. I don't remember anything about diabetes." Michael's mind raced. If Grace was diabetic and hadn't told them, if she'd had some kind of blood sugar emergency, but why wouldn't she have mentioned such a serious condition? He heard sirens approaching. "The ambulance is here." "Okay, go let them in. They'll take over from here." Michael rushed downstairs with Ethan, who was still whimpering and clinging to him. He opened the door for the paramedics and pointed them upstairs. "Second floor, first door on the right. She's unconscious, barely breathing, weak pulse. I found medication for diabetes in her purse. She might be having some kind of blood sugar crisis." The paramedics rushed upstairs with their equipment. Michael followed with Ethan, watching as they worked on Grace. "Blood sugar is dangerously low," one paramedic said. "She's in severe hypoglycemic shock. Starting glucose 4 now. How long has she been unconscious? The other paramedic asked Michael. I don't know exactly. Maybe 5 minutes? I heard the thud and came up immediately. That's good. We got here in time. But she needs to get to the hospital now. This is serious. As they stabilized Grace and prepared to transport her, Michael called Amanda. She answered on the second ring. Michael? I'm in the middle of... Amanda, Grace collapsed. She's unconscious. Severe hypoglycemic shock, the paramedics said. They're taking her to the hospital now. She's diabetic, did you know that? What? No, she never said anything about diabetes. Michael, is Ethan okay? He's fine, just scared. He was in the crib when it happened. The thud I heard was Grace hitting the floor. Oh my God. Michael, that could have been so much worse. If she'd been holding him, if she'd collapsed while going down the stairs. I know, Michael said, his voice tight. Amanda, we need to talk about this. Grace hid a serious medical condition from us. That puts Ethan at risk. We'll talk when I get home. I can't leave my shift right now, but I'll be there by 6. Michael, you might need to find alternative childcare until we figure out what's going on with Grace. After the ambulance left, Michael sat in the nursery rocking chair with Ethan, who'd finally calmed down and fallen asleep against his chest. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving Michael shaky and deeply unsettled. He trusted Grace completely. She'd seemed perfect, attentive to Ethan, reliable, professional. But she'd hidden a serious medical condition that could have put his son in danger. What else hadn't she told them? Michael's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Grace's sister, Linda. The hospital called me. I'm so sorry this happened. Grace has been struggling with her diabetes management but was afraid to tell you because she thought you'd fire her. Please, she's a good person. She just made a mistake. Michael stared at the text, conflicting emotions warring inside him. On one hand, he felt sympathy. Grace was clearly dealing with a serious health condition. On the other hand, she'd put Ethan at risk by hiding it. What if she'd been holding the baby when she collapsed? What if it had happened on the stairs? What if Ethan had gotten out of the crib somehow and hurt himself while Grace was unconscious? He texted back, I'm glad she's getting help. But we need to have a serious conversation about whether she can continue working with our son. When Amanda came home that evening, they had a long discussion about what to do. I feel terrible for Grace, Amanda said. Diabetes is a serious condition and managing it is hard. But Michael, she lied to us. By omission, but still. She put Ethan at risk. I know. But she's been good with him otherwise. Maybe if she gets her diabetes under control, if she's honest about it going forward. Can we trust her now? Amanda interrupted. She hid this for 3 months. What else might she be hiding? And what if it happens again? Michael knew Amanda was right, but he felt guilty. Grace had been desperate to keep her job and had made a terrible decision as a result. Firing her felt cruel, especially when she was in the hospital. Let's at least wait until she's recovered, Michael said. Then we can talk to her, understand what happened, make a decision. Meanwhile, what do we do about childcare? Amanda asked. I can't take time off. I'm in the middle of a crucial rotation. And you have that property development deal closing next week. I'll work from home, Michael said. I'll handle Ethan during the day. It's only temporary. But temporary stretched longer than expected. Grace was hospitalized for 3 days, and when she was finally discharged, her doctor said she needed at least 2 weeks to stabilize her blood sugar and adjust her medication regimen. She called Michael from the hospital, her voice weak and apologetic. Mr. Brennan, I'm so sorry. I should have told you about my diabetes. I was just so afraid of losing this job. It's the best position I've ever had and I love Ethan so much. I made a terrible mistake. Grace, I appreciate the apology, Michael said carefully. But we need to talk about whether you can continue in this position. Your health crisis put my son at risk. I know. I understand if you need to let me go. But Mr. Brennan, if you give me another chance, I promise I'll be completely honest about my health going forward. I'll wear a medical alert bracelet, I'll set alarms for my blood sugar checks. I'll even give you access to my glucose monitor so you can see my levels in real time. Please, I'll do anything to keep this job. Michael felt torn. Grace sounded genuinely remorseful and was offering reasonable precautions. But could he trust her again? Grace, I need to discuss this with my wife. In the meantime, you focus on recovering. We'll figure out the childcare situation. After he hung up, Michael felt exhausted. The stress of managing Ethan alone while trying to work was overwhelming. The baby was demanding, needing constant attention, and Michael's work was suffering. He'd already had to postpone 2 important meetings and was falling behind on a crucial project. That's when Mrs. Henderson, his elderly neighbor, knocked on his door with an unexpected offer. "Michael, I heard about what happened with your nanny. I wanted to offer you some help. My niece, Patricia, just moved to the area. She's looking for work and has extensive childcare experience. Would you like me to introduce you?" Michael was skeptical. After the Grace situation, he wasn't eager to hire someone else quickly. But he was desperate, and Mrs. Henderson had never steered him wrong before. "I'd appreciate that," Michael said. "But Mrs. Henderson, I need to be very thorough this time. Background checks, references, medical information, everything." Of course. Patricia is completely transparent. She's 35, has worked as a nanny for 10 years, has impeccable references, and no health issues that would interfere with childcare. I wouldn't recommend her if I wasn't confident she's trustworthy. That evening, Michael met Patricia Martinez. She was professional, warm but not overly familiar, and answered all his questions directly and honestly. "Do you have any health conditions we should be aware of?" Michael asked bluntly. "I have mild seasonal allergies which I manage with over-the-counter antihistamines," Patricia said. "No other health issues. I can provide medical records if you'd like verification." "I would like that actually. I'm sorry to be so thorough, but we just had a situation with our previous nanny that's made me cautious." "I completely understand," Patricia said. "Mr. Brennan, transparency is important to me too. I'd rather have you know everything up front than have surprises later. If you'd like, I can start with a trial period, maybe 2 weeks, where you can assess whether I'm a good fit before making any long-term commitments." Michael appreciated her approach. "That sounds reasonable. When could you start?" "Tomorrow if you need me." Patricia started the next day, and the difference was immediately apparent. She was efficient, attentive to Ethan, and proactive about communication. She sent Michael regular updates throughout the day, photos of Ethan playing, notes about his eating and sleeping, observations about his development. After a week, Michael felt confident enough in Patricia that he returned to working full days in his home office. The property development deal was back on track, and his stress levels had decreased significantly. But he still thought about Grace. She'd sent him a few texts checking in, asking if he'd made a decision about her employment. Michael had been avoiding the conversation, but he knew he needed to resolve it. 2 weeks after Grace's collapse, Michael finally called her. "Grace, I've thought a lot about this situation. I appreciate your apology and your willingness to be transparent going forward. But the reality is that we've hired someone else. Someone who was upfront about her health status from the beginning. I'm sorry, but I don't think we can continue your employment." Grace was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "I understand. I'm disappointed, but I understand. Mr. Brennan, can I ask one favor? Could I say goodbye to Ethan? I know he's too young to remember me, but I got very attached to him. It would help me with closure." Michael hesitated. Part of him thought a clean break was better. But Grace had taken care of his son for 3 months, and she sounded so sad. "Okay. You can come by tomorrow afternoon." Briefly. The next day, Grace arrived at the house looking healthier than she had the last time Michael had seen her. She'd gained back some weight and her color was better. She was wearing a medical alert bracelet and carried a small bag that Michael assumed contained her diabetes supplies. "Thank you for letting me do this," Grace said. She went to Ethan, who was in his bouncer, and knelt beside him. "Hi, sweet boy. I've missed you so much." Ethan gurgled and smiled at her. He recognized Grace and was happy to see her. Grace played with him for a few minutes, talking softly, then stood up with tears in her eyes. "He's gotten so big. You're taking good care of him." "Actually, our new nanny Patricia is taking care of him," Michael said. "She's been excellent." "I'm glad," Grace said, though she looked hurt. "Mr. Brennan, I know I messed up badly. But I want you to know that I love taking care of Ethan. He was more than just a job to me. I hope whoever is caring for him now loves him too." "She does," Michael assured her. After Grace left, Michael felt a complex mix of emotions. He'd made the right decision, he knew that. But he also felt guilty. Grace had been a good nanny in many ways, and her medical crisis hadn't been intentional. That evening, Patricia was gathering her things to leave when Michael said, "Patricia, can I ask you something?" "Of course. If you had a serious medical condition, would you tell your employer? Even if you thought it might cost you your job?" Patricia considered this. "Yes, because hiding it would be worse in the long run. If something happened while I was caring for a child, the consequences could be devastating, for the child, for the family, and for me." Honesty might cost me a job in the short term, but dishonesty could cost lives. That's what I thought, Michael said. Grace made a different calculation. She chose job security over transparency, and it almost had tragic consequences. It sounds like she learned a hard lesson, Patricia said. But Mr. Brennan, you made the right choice in hiring someone else. When it comes to your child's safety, you can't take chances. Trust has to be earned, and once it's broken, it's very hard to rebuild. Over the following weeks, Patricia proved herself repeatedly. She was reliable, competent, and completely transparent about everything related to Ethan's care. She kept detailed logs of his eating, sleeping, and developmental milestones. She communicated clearly about any concerns. She was everything Grace had been, and more because she'd been honest from the start. One afternoon, about a month after Grace's collapse, Michael was working in his office when he heard Patricia call out urgently, "Mr. Brennan, can you come here please?" Michael rushed to the nursery, his heart racing. Was history repeating itself? Was Patricia having some kind of crisis? But when he entered, Patricia was standing, healthy and alert, holding Ethan. "I'm sorry to alarm you, but look at this." She showed him a rash on Ethan's torso. "This appeared in the last hour. It's spreading quickly and he's running a slight fever. I think we should call the pediatrician." Michael examined the rash. It looked concerning, red, blotchy, spreading across Ethan's chest and back. "You're right. Let's call Dr. Morrison." The pediatrician had them bring Ethan in immediately. After examination, Dr. Morrison diagnosed a viral rash, not dangerous but uncomfortable. She prescribed treatment and sent them home with instructions. "Thank you for catching that so quickly," Michael told Patricia as they drove home. "It could have gotten worse if we'd waited." "That's my job," Patricia said. "I'm trained to notice changes in a child's condition and respond appropriately. It's what you hired me for." As simple as that statement was, it highlighted the difference between Patricia and Grace. Patricia was proactive, transparent, professional. Grace had been reactive, secretive, and ultimately unreliable despite her good intentions. 2 months after Grace's collapse, Michael received a letter from her. She was writing to update him on her health. Her diabetes was now well controlled, she'd completed a refresher course in pediatric first aid, and she'd found a new position with a family who knew about her health condition and had procedures in place to accommodate it. "I wanted you to know that I learned from my mistake," Grace wrote. "I should never have hidden my diabetes from you. It was selfish and dangerous. I'm grateful that Ethan wasn't hurt during my collapse. That will always haunt me, knowing what could have happened. I'm doing better now, both physically and professionally. I hope Ethan is thriving. He was a special little boy, and I'll always remember my time caring for him. Thank you for giving me a chance even though I ultimately let you down. Wishing you and your family all the best. Grace Chin." Michael showed the letter to Amanda that evening. "She sounds like she's genuinely learned from this experience." "I'm glad she's doing better," Amanda said. "But Michael, I don't regret your decision to hire Patricia. Grace put Ethan at risk even if unintentionally. As parents, we can't compromise on safety." "I know. You're right." Michael looked at the baby monitor showing Ethan sleeping peacefully in his crib, Patricia having just finished putting him down for the night. "Patricia has been incredible. Completely reliable, transparent, professional. It's such a relief to trust the person caring for our son." "That's what we deserve," Amanda said. "And it's what Ethan deserves, someone who puts his safety above everything else." 6 months after the incident, the Brennan family had settled into a comfortable routine. Patricia had become indispensable, so much so that Michael and Amanda had given her a raise and additional responsibilities. She'd essentially become part of the family, though she maintained appropriate professional boundaries. One evening, Michael was giving Ethan his bottle before bed. He'd started participating more in childcare, having realized during those weeks of managing alone that he'd been too disconnected from his son's daily life. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Michael said to Amanda, who was watching them. "That thud. That sound of Grace hitting the floor. It still gives me nightmares." "Me too," Amanda admitted. "Because I think about all the ways it could have been worse. If she'd been holding Ethan. If she'd fallen on him. If he'd somehow gotten out of the crib and gotten hurt while she was unconscious. It's terrifying. But it worked out," Michael said. "Ethan is fine. We found Patricia. Grace learned a lesson and is doing better. Everything worked out." "This time," Amanda said. "But Michael, this experience taught me something important. We can never take childcare for granted. We have to stay vigilant, ask questions, verify information. Patricia is wonderful, but that doesn't mean we stop paying attention. Agreed, Michael said. Ethan finished his bottle and burped contentedly, his eyes already closing with sleep. Michael held him close, feeling the weight and warmth of his son, thinking about how precious this child was and how quickly everything could change. A loud thud. A baby's scream. A terrifying discovery. Those few minutes had changed how Michael thought about childcare, trust, and parenting. He'd learned that good intentions weren't enough. That credentials and experience weren't enough. That even kind, caring people could make choices that put children at risk. He'd also learned that finding the right caregiver, someone like Patricia who valued transparency and took her responsibilities seriously, was worth the time and effort required to properly vet candidates. As Michael carried Ethan upstairs to his crib, Patricia met them in the hallway, having finished tidying the nursery. "He's almost asleep," Michael said. "Thanks for everything today, Patricia." "My pleasure," Patricia said. "He's a sweet boy. I'm honored to care for him." After Patricia left for the evening and Ethan was settled in his crib, Michael stood in the nursery doorway for a moment, looking at his sleeping son. He thought about that terrifying afternoon when he'd burst through this same doorway to find Grace unconscious on the floor and Ethan screaming in terror. The memory would probably never fully fade. But it had taught him an important lesson. When it comes to your child's safety, there's no such thing as being too careful. Trust must be earned through transparency, reliability, and consistent action. Grace had seemed perfect until she wasn't. Patricia seemed perfect and had proven it through months of honest, professional care. The difference wasn't in their capabilities or intentions, it was in their choices about transparency. Michael closed the nursery door quietly and went downstairs. Amanda was on the couch, reviewing medical journals for her residency. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Everything's fine," Michael said, sitting beside her. "I was just thinking about how lucky we are. Lucky that we found Patricia? Lucky that Ethan is safe. Lucky that Grace's collapse happened when and how it did, scary but not catastrophic. Lucky that we learned this lesson without Ethan getting hurt." Amanda took his hand. "We were lucky. But we also made good decisions afterward. We didn't just accept the situation, we made changes to protect our son. That wasn't luck. That was good parenting." "I guess you're right," Michael said. Upstairs, Ethan slept peacefully, unaware of the crisis that had shaped his parents' approach to his care. He was safe, loved, and protected by parents who'd learned to be vigilant and a nanny who understood that caring for a child meant being completely transparent about anything that might affect that child's safety. The loud thud from the baby's room had terrified Michael. What he'd found, Grace unconscious, Ethan screaming, had been a parent's nightmare. But it had also been a wake-up call, forcing Michael and Amanda to really examine who they trusted with their child and why. Sometimes the most terrifying moments teach the most important lessons. And sometimes discovering a problem, as scary as it is in the moment, prevents an even worse tragedy later. The thud had been terrifying. But what came after, the changes, the new vigilance, finding Patricia, had made his family safer and stronger. And that, Michael reflected, was what good parents did. They learned from scares. They adjusted. They prioritized their children's safety above convenience, comfort, or even compassion for struggling caregivers. It wasn't always easy, but it was always necessary. 8 months had passed since Grace's collapse, and life in the Brennan household had settled into a comfortable, predictable rhythm. Ethan was now 16 months old, walking unsteadily and babbling what Patricia insisted were almost words. Patricia had become so integral to their family that Michael and Amanda couldn't imagine life without her. Which is why the phone call Michael received on a Wednesday afternoon felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. "Mr. Brennan, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Westchester Police Department. I need to speak with you about an urgent matter concerning Patricia Martinez. Is she currently in your home?" Michael felt his stomach drop. "Yes, she's with my son. What's this about? Is Patricia in some kind of trouble?" "Mr. Brennan, I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not alert Ms. Martinez that we're speaking. Can you see her right now?" Michael walked quietly to his office doorway and peered into the living room. Patricia was on the floor with Ethan, helping him stack blocks, her attention fully on the toddler. She looked exactly as she always did, caring, attentive, normal. "I can see her," Michael said quietly, returning to his office and closing the door. "Detective, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Mr. Brennan, Patricia Martinez is not who she says she is. Her real name is Patricia Valdez, and she's wanted in connection with a series of thefts from wealthy families she's worked for over the past 5 years. We've been tracking her for months. She uses fake credentials, works for several months to gain trust, then systematically steals valuables, jewelry, cash, financial information. We believe she may have already stolen from you. Michael felt like he'd been punched in the gut. That's impossible. We've done background checks. She provided references. All fake, Detective Morrison interrupted. She's very sophisticated. She creates entire false identities, complete with fake references who are actually accomplices. The family she's stolen from didn't realize it for months after she left. She's that good at covering her tracks. But she's been with us for 8 months, Michael said, his mind racing. She's had access to everything. If she was going to steal, wouldn't she have done it already? That's what concerns us, the detective said. Based on her pattern, she's building up to something big. She stays longer with wealthier families, gaining more trust, getting access to more valuable information. Mr. Brennan, we have reason to believe she might be planning to steal your identity or access your financial accounts. We need to apprehend her before that happens. Michael's hands were shaking. He thought about Patricia with Ethan, holding him, feeding him, caring for him with what seemed like genuine love. Had it all been an act? Had she been pretending to care about his son while planning to rob them? What do you need me to do? Michael asked. We need you to act completely normal. We have officers on their way to your location now. They'll be there in approximately 10 minutes. Keep Ms. Martinez, or Ms. Valdez, occupied and unaware until they arrive. Can you do that? Yes, Michael said, though his heart was pounding. But Detective, my son is with her right now. Is he safe? We have no indication that she's ever harmed a child, Detective Morrison said. Her crimes have always been financial. But Mr. Brennan, do not confront her. Do not let her know we're coming. Just act normal. After hanging up, Michael stood in his office for a moment, trying to process this information. Patricia, trustworthy, transparent Patricia, was actually a con artist? A thief who'd been pretending to care about Ethan while planning to rob them? He thought about all the times he'd praised her professionalism, her transparency, her honesty. How many times had he compared her favorably to Grace, who'd hidden a medical condition but had genuinely cared about Ethan? Michael forced himself to take deep breaths and compose his expression before walking back to the living room. Patricia looked up and smiled, that warm, genuine-seeming smile he trusted for 8 months. Mr. Brennan. Perfect timing. Ethan just stacked 4 blocks all by himself. That's a new record. Michael forced himself to smile. That's wonderful. He's getting so coordinated. He really is, Patricia said, watching Ethan with what looked like pride. He's such a smart boy. I'm so proud of... She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes suddenly focusing on something behind Michael. He turned and saw 2 police officers standing in the doorway, having been let in by Amanda, who just arrived home from the hospital. Patricia Martinez? One of the officers said. Or should we say Patricia Valdez? We need you to come with us. Patricia's expression changed instantly, the warmth draining away, replaced by something cold and calculating. She didn't deny it or protest innocence. Instead, she simply stood up, stepping away from Ethan. I assume you've been talking to Detective Morrison, she said calmly to Michael. I was wondering how long it would take them to find me here. You admit it? Michael said, shocked by her casual tone. You admit you're a thief? I admit I'm Patricia Valdez, she said. Though, thief is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of myself as someone who redistributes wealth from people who have far too much to people who have far too little. You stole from families who trusted you to care for their children, one of the officers said, stepping forward with handcuffs. I never hurt the children, Patricia said quickly, glancing at Ethan, who was watching the scene with wide, confused eyes. I loved every child I cared for. That was always real. But everything else was a lie, Michael said, anger flooding through him. Your credentials, your references, your entire identity, all lies. We trusted you with our son. And I took excellent care of him, Patricia said as the officer cuffed her hands behind her back. Mr. Brennan, I know you won't believe this, but I do care about Ethan. Yes, I came here with the intention of eventually stealing from you. But over these months, that little boy got under my skin. He's special. Don't you dare, Amanda said from the doorway, her voice shaking with rage. Don't you dare pretend you care about our son while admitting you were planning to rob us. You're a con artist. Everything about you is fake. Not everything, Patricia said quietly, looking at Ethan one last time. My feelings for that child were real. That's actually why I haven't stolen from you yet. I kept putting it off, telling myself I'd wait one more month. Because I didn't want to leave him. Save it for the judge, the officer said, leading her toward the door. Patricia Valdez, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. You have the right to remain silent. As they read her rights and let her out, Michael scooped up Ethan, holding his son tightly. Amanda joined them, and they stood together watching through the window as Patricia was placed in a police car. I can't believe this, Amanda said, tears streaming down her face. We trusted her. We brought her into our home, gave her access to everything, let her care for our baby. And she was planning to rob us the whole time? According to the detective, she's been doing this for years, Michael said, his voice hollow. Multiple families. She creates fake identities, fake credentials, gains trust, then steals everything she can. How did they catch her? Amanda asked. I don't know all the details yet. Detective Morrison said she'd come by later to explain everything and take our statement. Ethan, sensing his parents' distress, started to fuss. Papa, he said, one of his few clear words. Papa's sad. Papa's okay, buddy, Michael said, though his voice cracked. Papa's okay. But he wasn't okay. None of them were okay. Detective Morrison arrived an hour later, after Ethan had been put down for his nap. She sat with Michael and Amanda in the living room and explained how they'd caught Patricia. Patricia Valdez has been on our radar for 3 years, Detective Morrison explained. She's sophisticated, she creates complete false identities, complete with fake social security numbers, fake employment histories, fake references who are actually part of her network. She works exclusively with wealthy families, gaining their trust over several months before executing her thefts. But how did you find her here? Michael asked. One of her previous victims hired a private investigator who specialized in tracking con artists. He eventually identified a pattern in how she created her fake identities. When we put that pattern into our database, we got a hit on Patricia Martinez. Everything about her identity, her credentials, her employment history, even her supposed aunt, Mrs. Henderson, was fabricated. Michael felt sick. Mrs. Henderson isn't her aunt? Mrs. Henderson is an elderly woman who Patricia befriended and manipulated. Mrs. Henderson genuinely believed Patricia was her niece. Patricia had convinced her they were related through a complicated family tree. Mrs. Henderson had no idea she was helping a con artist gain access to your home. So Patricia targeted us specifically? Amanda asked. Yes. She researches her targets carefully. She knew you were a wealthy couple with a young child, she knew you'd recently had problems with your previous nanny, and she knew you were desperate for reliable childcare. She used Mrs. Henderson to create what seemed like a trustworthy introduction. What was she planning to steal? Michael asked. Detective Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed them a list. Based on what we found in her apartment and her digital communications with her accomplices, she was planning to steal your financial information, create fraudulent credit cards in your name, access your investment accounts, and steal physical valuables from your home, jewelry, artwork, anything she could quickly liquidate. She was also collecting information about your business, Mr. Brennan, potentially planning to commit corporate fraud as well. Michael felt like he was going to be sick. How much damage could she have done? Millions of dollars, potentially. And months or years of work to recover your identity and credit. Some of her previous victims are still dealing with the fallout years later. But she didn't actually steal anything from us? Amanda asked. Not yet, Detective Morrison said. And that's the interesting part. Based on her typical timeline, she should have executed the theft months ago. But she kept delaying. In her communications with her accomplices, she kept saying she needed more time, she wasn't ready yet. Her partners were getting frustrated with her. She said something when you arrested her, Michael said slowly. She said she kept putting it off because she didn't want to leave Ethan. Do you think that was true? Detective Morrison considered this. Mr. Brennan, Patricia Valdez is a career criminal. She's manipulative, calculating, and she's stolen from at least 7 families that we know of. But she's also human. And sometimes, even con artists form genuine attachments to the people they're deceiving. It's possible that she did develop real feelings for your son and that those feelings conflicted with her criminal intentions. But not enough to stop her from planning to rob us, Amanda said bitterly. No, Detective Morrison agreed. Not enough to make her stop. Just enough to make her hesitate. Which, ultimately, is what allowed us to catch her before she could do any real damage to your family. After Detective Morrison left, Michael and Amanda sat in stunned silence. I feel like such an idiot, Michael finally said. I was so proud of how thoroughly I'd vetted Patricia. I thought I'd learn from the Grace situation, do background checks, ask the right questions, demand transparency. But it was all fake. The background check came back clean because her fake identity was so good. The references were convincing because they were part of her con. Everything I thought I'd verified was a lie. It's not your fault, Amanda said. She's a professional criminal. This is what she does for a living. We can't blame ourselves for being fooled by someone whose entire life is built around fooling people. But what if Detective Morrison hadn't called? Michael asked. What if they hadn't tracked her down? Patricia could have stolen everything from us. Our savings, our investments, our identities. She could have destroyed us financially. But she didn't, Amanda pointed out. We got lucky. The police caught her in time. Michael stood and walked to the window looking out at his property. Do you know what's really messing with my head? Part of me actually believes her. When she said she cared about Ethan, that her feelings for him were real, I believe that was true. I saw her with him every day for 8 months. That affection, that attention, that care, it can't have all been fake. Does it matter? Amanda asked. Even if she did care about Ethan, she was still planning to rob us. Her feelings didn't stop her from being a criminal. I know. You're right. It makes me question everything. With Grace, the problem was clear. She hid a medical condition and put Ethan at risk. Wrong but understandable. With Patricia, it's more complicated. She seemed perfect. She was perfect in terms of her childcare. But her entire identity was a lie, and she was planning to destroy us financially. Amanda came to stand beside him. Michael, here's what I'm taking from this. We can't ever truly know if someone is trustworthy just by checking boxes. Background checks can be faked. References can lie. Credentials can be forged. Grace seemed risky but turned out to just be someone with a medical condition who made a bad choice. Patricia seemed perfect but turned out to be a career criminal. So what do we do? Michael asked. How do we ever trust anyone to care for Ethan again? I don't know, Amanda admitted. But we have to figure it out because we both have careers that require us to work. Over the following days, as the reality of Patricia's betrayal sank in, Michael and Amanda struggled with childcare. Michael took time off work to stay with Ethan while they figured out what to do. Amanda adjusted her schedule at the hospital to be home more. They contacted multiple nanny agencies, but Michael found himself unable to trust anyone. Every candidate seemed suspicious. Every reference seemed potentially fake. Every smile seemed calculated. I think Patricia broke my ability to trust, Michael told Amanda one evening after interviewing another nanny candidate who seemed perfectly qualified but whom Michael had immediately doubted. Mine too, Amanda admitted. That woman today seemed great on paper, but all I could think was, so did Patricia. How do we get past this? The answer came from an unexpected source. Grace Chun called Michael's cell phone, a number she shouldn't have had anymore, and asked if they could meet for coffee. I know this seems strange, Grace said when Michael answered, suspicious about how she'd gotten his current number. Mrs. Henderson gave me your new number. She's devastated about Patricia, by the way. She had no idea she was being used. What do you want, Grace? Michael asked, not unkindly but warily. I heard about what happened with Patricia. It's been all over the news, nanny con artist arrested. I wanted to reach out because I thought you might need someone to talk to. Someone who understands what it's like to be the nanny in a complicated situation. Grace, I don't think. Please just coffee. 1 hour. I promise I'm not trying to get my job back or manipulate you. I just thought I might be able to help. Against his better judgment, Michael agreed to meet her at a coffee shop the next day. Grace arrived looking healthy, she'd gained some weight back, her color was good, and she was wearing her medical alert bracelet prominently. Thank you for meeting me, Grace said as they sat down with their coffees. I know you had no obligation to do this. I'm not sure why I'm here, Michael admitted. What could you possibly say that would help? Maybe nothing, Grace said. But I've been thinking a lot about trust lately. About how I broke your trust by hiding my diabetes and how that cost me a job I loved. And then I heard about Patricia and I realized something. You chose her over me because she seemed more trustworthy. She was transparent about her health, had good credentials, said all the right things. But it was all fake. Meanwhile, I was honest, too late but eventually honest, and I genuinely cared about Ethan. But you trusted the liar over the person who made a mistake and admitted it. Michael felt defensive. That's not fair. You put Ethan at risk. I did, Grace interrupted. I absolutely did, and I deserve to lose my job. But Michael, did I do more damage than Patricia? I collapsed once due to a medical condition I was trying to manage. Patricia was planning to steal everything from you while pretending to love your son. Which was actually worse. Michael sat back, stunned by the question. That's not, you can't compare. Why not? Grace asked. I'm not saying you should have kept me employed. You made the right choice given what you knew. But I am saying that perfect isn't always real. Patricia seemed perfect because every part of her was designed to seem perfect. I seemed flawed because I was flawed. I'm a real person with a real health condition who made a real mistake. What's your point, Grace? My point is that you need to be able to trust someone, and perfect shouldn't be your standard. Real should be your standard. Find someone who's honest about their flaws, someone who admits mistakes, someone who's imperfect but genuine. Because the person who seems perfect might be another Patricia. After they parted ways, Grace's words stayed with Michael. That evening he discussed the conversation with Amanda. She might have a point, Amanda said thoughtfully. We've been looking for someone perfect. Someone with flawless credentials, perfect references, no health issues, no complications. But Grace is right, perfect might just be perfectly fake. So what do we do differently? Michael asked. We look for genuine, Amanda said. We look for someone who's honest about who they are, flaws included. We look for someone who admits when they don't know something. We look for real. The next week, they interviewed a nanny candidate named Sarah Williams. She was 45, had raised 3 children of her own, and had been working as a nanny for 10 years. Her credentials were good but not perfect. There were gaps in her employment history that she openly explained. I took 2 years off to care for my mother when she had cancer, Sarah explained. And there was a 6-month period where I struggled to find work after a family I worked for moved unexpectedly. I did some retail work during that time to pay bills, which isn't on my nanny resume. But I can provide references from the retail managers if you'd like. You have a medical condition listed on your forms, Michael noted. Migraines? Yes, I get them occasionally. Usually I can manage them with medication, but sometimes I need to lie down in a dark room for an hour. If that happened while I was caring for your son, I'd need you or your wife to come home, or I'd need backup childcare available. I understand if that's a deal breaker. Michael appreciated her honesty. How often do these migraines occur? Maybe once every 2 months. They're unpredictable, but I've learned my triggers and I do my best to avoid them. The important thing is that I'm always honest about when I'm having one. I'd never try to push through and put a child at risk. Michael and Amanda exchanged glances. Sarah wasn't perfect. She had employment gaps, a medical condition that could cause problems, and limitations she was openly acknowledging. But she was honest, real, genuine. Sarah, can I ask you something? Michael said. If you made a mistake while caring for my son, nothing catastrophic but a genuine mistake, would you tell me? Yes, Sarah said without hesitation. Because hiding mistakes only makes things worse. If I burned the baby's food or forgot to give him his vitamins or let him stay in a wet diaper too long because I was distracted, I'd tell you immediately. I'd rather be embarrassed about a small mistake than fired for lying about it. They hired Sarah. And while she wasn't perfect, she did have a migraine attack 2 months and that required Michael to come home from work, and she occasionally ran late due to traffic. She was reliable, honest, and genuine. Most importantly, she genuinely cared about Ethan. Not in the calculated way Patricia had pretended to care, but in the real, imperfect way that included occasionally getting frustrated with him, making small mistakes and admitting when she didn't know something. 6 months after Patricia's arrest, Michael received a call from Detective Morrison with an update. Patricia Valdez pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and theft, the detective said. She's been sentenced to 8 years in prison. As part of her plea deal, she's agreed to help us identify her accomplices and return as much stolen property as possible to her victims. Did she say anything about us? Michael asked. About why she didn't steal from us? Actually, yes. She asked me to pass along a message. She said to tell you that what she said during her arrest was true. Her feelings for Ethan were genuine, and that's why she kept delaying. She said she's sorry she couldn't be the person you thought she was, but she's glad she at least didn't hurt you financially. She wanted you to know that even criminals can have moments of conscience. That's... Michael didn't know how to finish that sentence. Complicated? Detective Morrison suggested. Mr. Brennan, people are rarely all good or all bad. Patricia Valdez is a criminal who's hurt a lot of people. But she's also apparently someone capable of caring about a child enough to sabotage her own criminal plans. Both things can be true. After hanging up, Michael went to find Ethan, who was now 2 years old and playing with Sarah in the living room. When Ethan saw his father, he ran over on his sturdy little legs shouting, "Dada! Dada!" Michael scooped him up, holding him tight, thinking about the journey they'd been on. Grace's collapse had terrified him and taught him to demand transparency. Patricia's betrayal had devastated him and taught him that perfect could be perfectly fake. And Sarah, imperfect, honest Sarah, had taught him that real was better than perfect. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, noticing his expression. "Yeah," Michael said. "Just thinking about how lucky we are." "Lucky that you found me?" Sarah asked with a smile. "Lucky that you're real," Michael corrected. "That you're honest and genuine and comfortable admitting you're not perfect." "Nobody's perfect," Sarah said. "Anyone who says they are is probably lying." That evening, after Sarah had gone home and Ethan was in bed, Michael told Amanda about Detective Morrison's call. "Patricia said she actually cared about Ethan," Michael said. "That it was real. Do you believe her?" Amanda asked. "I think I do," Michael admitted. "I think Patricia is a criminal and a con artist, but I also think she's human. And I think her feelings for Ethan conflicted with her criminal plans enough that she kept delaying. Which ultimately saved us from being robbed." "So in a weird way Ethan saved us," Amanda said. "By being lovable enough that even a career criminal couldn't bring herself to hurt his family." "I guess so," Michael said. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Amanda said, "You know what I've learned from all this? The Grace situation, the Patricia situation, finding Sarah?" "What?" "That there's no such thing as a perfect childcare situation. There are just different kinds of imperfect. Grace was imperfect because she hid a medical condition. Patricia seemed perfect but was actually a criminal. Sarah is imperfect because she has migraines and isn't always punctual. But Sarah's imperfections are honest, and that makes all the difference." "I was just thinking the same thing," Michael said. "Perfect is suspicious. Real is messy. But real is what we need." The loud thud from Ethan's room all those months ago had terrified Michael. What he'd found, Grace unconscious on the floor, had been frightening and had changed how he thought about childcare forever. But the journey that followed had taught him something important, that seeking perfection in caregivers was not only unrealistic but potentially dangerous. Patricia had seemed perfect because she'd manufactured perfection. Grace had seemed flawed because she was flawed, but honest about it, eventually. And Sarah, with her migraines and her occasional lateness and her honest admission of limitations, was neither perfect nor dangerous. She was just real. Human. Trustworthy in the way that actually mattered, not because she claimed to be perfect but because she admitted when she wasn't. The thud had been terrifying. But what came after, the lessons learned, the wisdom gained, the eventual finding of Sarah, had made them better parents and better judges of character. Sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most important growth. And sometimes discovering that someone isn't perfect is less dangerous than believing someone who claims to be. Michael had learned to trust the imperfect and doubt the perfect. It wasn't the lesson he'd expected to learn from a loud thud and a terrifying discovery. But it was the lesson he needed.